Clara Wynn slammed her brakes. Tires screamed, metal sparked. A black Harley spun out, crashing hard into the ditch. She ran. The rider was down, blood seeping through a torn Hell's Angels vest marked President. "Stay with me!" she yelled, pressing her hands over the wound. His eyes flickered open. "Why? Did you stop?" By sunset, she no longer had a chance at the interview. By sunrise, that same biker would rebuild her entire life. What happened between those two moments will shock you. Hit subscribe to Heart Tales, because some choices cost everything. Let's check in. 1 for first-time viewer. 2 if you've seen a few. 3 if you never miss. The scream of twisting metal split the noon air. Clara Wynn slammed the brakes so hard the seatbelt cut into her chest. Ahead, a motorcycle spun once on the asphalt, sparks spitting before collapsing in a heap of chrome and dust. The rider was thrown clear, tumbling into the ditch like a rag doll. His helmet rolled halfway down the embankment and stopped, cracked and smoking. She didn't think. She threw the gear into park, flung the door open and ran. The heat hit her like a wall, dry, burning, the kind that smells of tar and iron. The man lay half buried in weeds, leather vest torn, blood pooling under his ribs. His bike, a black Harley with red patches, hissed as coolant leaked onto the dirt. "Hey! Can you hear me?" she shouted, skidding to her knees beside him. No answer. His chest moved, shallow, uneven. His hand twitched once and fell. Clara's phone was in her hand before she realized it. 911. There's been a crash. Highway 19 near mile 63. Please, he's not breathing right. Ma'am, do not move the victim. Can you confirm he's conscious? He's fading. Send someone. Ambulance. ETA, approximately 30 to 40 minutes. 30, he doesn't have 30. Stay on the line, ma'am. She hung up. Her blazer was already off, pressed against the wound under his ribs. The fabric darkened instantly, heat and blood merging in her palms. "Come on, stay with me," she said, voice breaking. He groaned, the sound low and animal. Up close, she saw the patches on his vest. Hell's Angels Nomads, California, the kind of thing that made most people cross the street. But here he was, pale lips trembling, eyes rolling back. Hey, look at me!" She leaned closer, blocking the sun from his face. His breath rattled, the smell of gasoline clinging to it. He blinked once, then again. When his gaze found hers, it steadied just for a moment. His hand caught her wrist, surprisingly firm. His voice scraped out like gravel. "Why did you stop?" Clara froze. The question cut through the noise. The ticking hazard lights. The faint hiss from the engine above. She didn't know how to answer. She just said, "Because someone had to..." He tried to speak again, but coughed, blood flecking his chin. She held his shoulder, shaking her head. "Don't talk, just breathe." The phone on the ground lit up. 15 missed calls. HR, the firm she'd spent a year trying to get into. Her interview was in 10 minutes. 10 minutes that could fix everything. The foreclosure notice on the fridge, Evan's exhausted eyes, the savings account down to 3 figures. She stared at the screen, then at the man bleeding in her arms. His grip tightened as if begging her not to leave. She stayed. The sun burned hotter, turning the world white. She tore a strip from her blouse to tie around his arm, kept talking to him, anything to stop the fading. "You ride long? You got family close? You stay awake for me, okay?" He didn't answer. His pulse fluttered like a trapped bird beneath her fingers. Somewhere behind her, a horn blared. A truck slowed, then kept going. No one stopped. Clara screamed after it, but the road swallowed her voice. Dust settled. The only sound left was the faint, choking breath of a man everyone else had decided wasn't worth saving. She leaned close again. "You're gonna make it. You hear me? You're gonna make it." His eyes flickered. For a moment, something fierce moved in them. Not fear, not pain, something older. "Logan," he whispered. "Logan Maddox." His head dropped back, eyes closing. Clara pressed harder on the wound, feeling her hand slip. "Stay with me, Logan." Her watch beeped. 11:55. The interview started in 5 minutes. Sirens were still miles away. When the paramedics finally arrived, Clara's hair was matted to her face, her blouse torn to ribbons. They lifted Logan onto a stretcher, oxygen mask strapped to his mouth. She stepped back, her knees giving out in the gravel. One of the medics glanced at her. "You, the one who called?" She nodded numbly. "You probably saved him," he said. She wanted to believe it. They shut the ambulance doors. The siren wailed, fading down the highway until there was only heat and silence again. Clara looked at her hands. Her fingertips were stained red, her palms shaking. Somewhere behind her, a car door hung open, GPS voice still chirping. "Turn right in 0.2 miles. She got in, started the engine, and drove. By the time she reached the office, the lobby was quiet, the receptionist already cleaning her desk. "I'm here for the 12:30 with Maya Trent." The woman looked up, polite but firm. "They just wrapped up. I'm sorry, Ms. Wynn," Clara said. The receptionist hesitated, eyes flicking to Clara's clothes, the mud streaks, the drying blood on her cuff. "I'm afraid the position's been filled." Clara forced a smile. "Could I leave my portfolio?" "They said it's not necessary." Outside, the afternoon light felt cruel. The glass buildings gleamed, as if the world had already forgotten what she'd done an hour ago. She sat in her car, engine off, forehead against the steering wheel. Her phone vibrated once. A text from Evan. "How'd it go?" Clara didn't answer. She stared out at the road, at the traffic rolling past, at a tiny trail of blood still dried on her sleeve. The heat shimmered over the asphalt. Somewhere out there, an ambulance siren rose again, distant but steady. She whispered to no one, "Please let it mean something," and for a long time the only reply was the ticking of the cooling engine and the heartbeat she wasn't sure she still had. The hospital clerk's voice was polite, rehearsed, and final. "I'm sorry, ma'am, we can't release patient information without authorization." Clara gripped the phone tighter. "I'm not asking for details, I just need to know if he's alive." "I'm sorry," the woman repeated, softer this time, and the line went dead. Clara stared at the silent receiver for a long moment, then placed it down on the counter beside the sink. Her reflection in the kitchen window looked foreign. Hair tangled, dark circles under her eyes, a small streak of dried blood still clinging to the edge of her nail, no matter how many times she'd scrubbed. She opened the refrigerator out of habit. A nearly empty carton of milk, half a lemon, and a single bottle of water stared back. She closed it again. Outside, the sunlight was merciless. The street shimmered, and even the neighbor's dog lay sprawled in the shade, tongue hanging out. She'd always loved the way daylight made things feel honest, bright, unhidden. Now it only burned. That afternoon she opened her email. There was a new message from Trent and Lemaire Architects. "Thank you for your time. The position has been filled." Beneath it, a line she couldn't stop reading. "We wish you success in your future endeavors." She shut the laptop and pushed it away. Evan came home around 5, exhaustion written into every movement. His scrubs were wrinkled, his eyes dull from back-to-back shifts. He tried to smile when he saw her, but it faltered halfway. "You heard back?" he asked. "Yeah, and they said no." He nodded slowly, took off his badge and hung it on the chair. "It's not your fault." "I was late," she said. "They don't need a reason beyond that. It's one interview, Clara. It was the interview." He leaned against the counter, crossing his arms. "We'll find another way." Her voice cracked. "There is no other way. The mortgage is due next week and I haven't worked in 11 months. You can't keep pulling doubles just to feed both of us." Evan's jaw tightened. "Would you rather I stopped?" "That's not what I'm saying." "Then what are you saying? That maybe I shouldn't have stopped that day?" The silence that followed was heavy, shameful. She didn't mean it, not really, but the words were already between them, hanging like smoke. Evan's shoulders dropped. "You don't mean that." She swallowed. "No," she whispered. "But part of me wishes I didn't have to choose." He reached out, brushed her arm. "You did the right thing. You saved someone. Then why does it feel like I ruined everything?" That night, she sat at the dining table long after Evan went to bed. Bills lay scattered across the surface, utilities, car insurance, final notices. She stacked them neatly, one by one, until the pile looked almost manageable. Then she reached for the top envelope, tore it open, and read the line she already knew by heart. Payment required within 10 days to avoid foreclosure. Clara pressed her palms to her eyes. She wanted to cry, but she was too tired. The days bled together after that. She applied for smaller jobs, assistant draftsman, part-time clerk, even night shifts at a supply store, but no one called back. Each time her phone buzzed, hope sparked for a moment, only to burn out just as quickly. She started avoiding the window. The mailbox became a threat. By the 5th day, she drove back to Highway 19. The road was clean again. No wreck, no skid marks, no sign that anything had ever happened, only the faint scent of sunburned asphalt and dust. She parked on the shoulder, stepped out, and walked to the ditch where she'd found him. Someone had been there before her. A bunch of wildflowers, daisies, clovers, stems already wilting, rested in the grass. No card, no ribbon, just color against the dirt. She crouched beside them, tracing a finger along one of the petals. "Did you make it?" she whispered to the air. A passing truck sent a gust of wind that carried her words away. The horizon shimmered with heat. She stayed there for a while, squinting at the long stretch of road. Part of her expected another rider to appear, maybe even the same one, standing tall and grinning, telling her it had all been worth it. But the highway remained empty, just the steady hum of distant engines fading into silence. Back in her car, she glanced at her hands on the steering wheel. The skin had healed from where the seatbelt cut her, but a faint scar remained, thin, white, permanent. She flexed her fingers and whispered, "What did it cost you to save him?" Her phone buzzed with a message from Evan. "Don't forget to eat something. I'll be home late." She didn't reply. That evening, as the sun dipped low, she sat by the window with the lights off. The neighborhood glowed in gold and shadow. Children laughed somewhere down the street. The sound felt distant, like it belonged to a life she'd already stepped out of. She opened her laptop again, scrolling through old projects, bridges she'd designed, sketches she'd never submitted, notes from clients who once called her brilliant. Her fingers hovered over the trackpad. One wrong choice and all of it had unraveled. But when she closed her eyes, she saw him again, the biker's hand gripping hers, his blood warm against her palm, that look of disbelief when she stayed. "Why did you stop?" The question kept looping in her mind. Not an accusation anymore, but a tether, pulling her back to something she couldn't name yet. At midnight, she went outside. The air had cooled, the moon was thin, the kind that doesn't light much but still insists on being seen. She stood in the driveway, staring down the road. Every set of headlights made her chest tighten. Every engine sound made her wonder if it was him. But no one came. She went back inside, turned off her phone, and crawled into bed beside Evan. He was already asleep, arm thrown over the empty space between them. She lay still, watching the faint line of dawn begin to form outside the window. When morning came, the notice was still taped to the door, the phone was still silent, and Clara Wynn, who once believed daylight was always honest, found herself praying that just this once it would lie. By the 7th morning after the crash, Clara had stopped counting the hours she spent staring at her phone. There were only 2 things left in her inbox: overdue notices and silence. The coffee tasted burnt, the kind that comes from reheating yesterday's pot because the new beans cost too much. Outside, the world was drenched in sunlight, bright, unkind, cloudless. She sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by quiet. The clock on the wall ticked with ruthless precision. Every sound felt louder now: the fridge hum, the creak of the old floorboards, even the sigh of the wind slipping through the cracked window frame. When the knock came, she almost spilled her coffee. It wasn't sharp or aggressive, just firm, 3 deliberate raps that seemed to echo inside her chest. She crossed the living room and opened the door. No one was there, only the smell of asphalt and sunlight. Then she saw it, at her feet, resting against the step, a small bundle of wildflowers wrapped in white paper, tied with a piece of red string. She froze. The same flowers she'd seen by the highway: clovers, daisies, that faint violet that blooms in dry soil. She bent down, picked them up. The paper was blank, no note, no name. But tucked between the stems was a single playing card, the Ace of Spades. Her breath caught. She'd seen it before, in movies, headlines, the mythology surrounding the hellsangels. Some said it was a mark of respect, others said it was a warning. She stood there in the doorway, staring down the street. Heat waves shimmered above the pavement. No bikes, no engines, just light and silence. Inside, she set the flowers on the table, the card beside them. They looked strangely beautiful against the mess of unpaid bills and crumpled resumes. By noon, curiosity had beaten fear. She searched the news, scrolling through local reports: motorcycle crash near Highway 19, victim in critical condition. The name jumped out at her: Logan Maddox, 43, local chapter president of the Hells Angels. Condition stable but guarded. He was alive. Her hand trembled on the mouse. She wanted to feel relief, but what came instead was something else, a kind of vertigo, as if the world had tilted slightly, and she was the only one who noticed. She closed the laptop and went outside. The air was sharp with heat, carrying the distant buzz of cicadas. She climbed into her car, engine groaning, and drove without thinking. The highway looked different in daylight, cleaner, emptier, as if it had erased the memory of what happened. When she reached mile 63, she pulled over. The grass had been trimmed, the ditch was dry and even. The only trace of that day was the faint shadow of tire marks fading into dust. But there, just where she'd knelt in the dirt, was another bunch of wildflowers, new ones, fresh. Someone had replaced them. Clara got out of the car, heart pounding, and walked toward them. The hum of the wind swallowed every sound. She crouched, brushing her fingers across the petals. There was a faint indentation in the dirt beside the flowers, as if the weight of a man had been there recently. Her gaze lifted instinctively toward the road. In the distance, something glinted. Chrome. She shaded her eyes, but by the time she focused, the glint was gone, vanished over the horizon. She stood there a long while, the sun pressing against the back of her neck, the smell of cut grass mixing with hot metal. When she finally drove home, she didn't turn on the radio. She couldn't stop replaying that single line from the article: stable but guarded. Guarded by who? That night the dream came again. She was back on the road, heat shimmering, the world moving in slow motion. The motorcycle hit the gravel, the air filled with sparks, and when she reached him, it wasn't Logan on the ground anymore. It was herself. Same blood, same breath, same voice whispering, "Why did you stop?" She woke with a start, drenched in sweat. The clock read 3:17 a.m. Evan's side of the bed was empty. He'd picked up another night shift. Unable to sleep, she went into the kitchen for water. Through the thin curtains, the world was still, the faint silver of pre-dawn creeping across the houses. She glanced outside and froze. A motorcycle sat parked across the street. The rider wasn't moving, just sitting there, helmet on, head bowed slightly. The engine was silent. Clara stood motionless, her pulse hammering in her throat. She blinked, and when she looked again, the bike was gone. The sound of a distant engine echoed faintly, then disappeared into the night. When Evan came home at sunrise, she didn't mention it. Maybe she was imagining things, maybe exhaustion was playing tricks, but as she poured him coffee, she noticed something new on the doorstep when she opened the door for the morning light. A plain white envelope, no stamp, no name, just one word scrawled across the front in black marker, gratitude. Inside was a single sheet of paper, typed, clean, deliberate. Sometimes doing the right thing costs more than people can afford, but some debts we always pay. Beneath the sentence, a small logo was embossed, a winged skull with a halo of flames. Clara stared at it until her hands started to shake. Evan noticed. "What's that?" "Nothing," she said quickly, folding it up. "Just junk mail." But her voice betrayed her. She tucked the letter into her bag and tried to go about the day as if it hadn't happened. She went to the store, applied for 2 more jobs, came home and cooked something that barely passed for dinner. Yet every time she passed the table, she saw those flowers, still fresh, somehow not wilting. That night she set the Ace of Spades beside her bed. She didn't know why. Maybe because part of her wanted proof that any of this was real. When she finally drifted to sleep, the roar of a motorcycle lingered somewhere in the distance, low and steady like a heartbeat. The sun was already high when the knock came again. This time, it wasn't the uncertain tap of a stranger passing by. It was deliberate. 3 solid knocks, heavy enough to rattle the glass in the door. Clara froze halfway through buttoning her blouse. She wasn't expecting anyone. The mortgage officer usually called, not knocked. For a moment she thought about ignoring it, but the sound came again, measured, patient, waiting. She walked to the door, barefoot on the cool tiles, and peered through the peephole. 2 men stood on the porch, not cops, not bankers, leather vests, patches, boots dusted with miles of road. The sunlight gleamed off the metal pins on their jackets. Her first instinct was to lock the door. The words "Hell's Angels Nomads" stitched across the back of one of them caught her breath. The taller man noticed movement behind the curtain. He took a step closer, removed his sunglasses, and for a moment his expression softened. "Miss Wynn?" His voice was calm, low, unthreatening. She hesitated before opening the door halfway. "Who are you?" The man nodded once. "Name's Rex Alvarez. This is Dean Holt. We're with the club." "The club," she repeated, her tone sharp with nerves. "You mean Hell's Angels?" Rex finished easily, no apology in his voice. "We're here because of Logan Maddox." The name hit her like an invisible punch. "He's alive?" Rex's mouth twitched in something close to a smile. "Very much. He's healing. Said you might still be wondering." Dean held up a small envelope. "He wanted us to give you this." Clara took it cautiously. It was plain white, sealed with red wax, the imprint of a spade pressed into the center. Her fingers trembled. "I don't understand. How did he find me?" Rex shrugged. "Let's just say our network's good at saying thank you. He remembered your name from the med report. The paramedic said you wouldn't leave his side." Clara's voice lowered. "He almost died." Rex's eyes softened. "He says you're the reason he didn't." She looked down at the envelope, heart pounding. The paper was thick, expensive. She broke the seal and unfolded the note inside. "To the woman who stopped when no one else did, thank you. My brothers will see you're not forgotten." There was a single bill folded inside. 5 crisp $100 notes bound with a rubber band. "I can't take this," she said quickly, thrusting it back toward them. "I didn't do it for money." Rex chuckled, shaking his head. "That's exactly why it's yours." Dean tilted his chin toward the porch railing. "You dropped something." Clara glanced down. A small metal key lay on the wood, glinting in the sunlight. She bent to pick it up. No tag, no markings, just a key, cool and unfamiliar. "What is this?" Rex's voice was quiet, unreadable. "He said you'd know when you need it." Her throat went dry. "This is insane." Rex slid his sunglasses back on, unfazed. "Ma'am, the world's insane. We just ride through it." Before she could ask more, both men turned toward the street. 2 motorcycles waited at the curb, engines gleaming like mirrors. The sunlight bounced off the chrome as they swung their legs over the seats. Rex looked back once. "You did something good, Miss Wynn. Not everyone can live with that kind of courage. Logan wanted you to hear it from us." "Will I see him?" she asked. "When he's strong enough," Rex said. "He's not the type to forget a debt of honor." Then the engines roared to life. The sound filled the quiet street, deep and guttural, vibrating through the pavement. Neighbors peeked through blinds, curious but afraid to step outside. Clara stood there on the porch, the letter in one hand, the money in the other, the key burning against her skin. As the bikes disappeared down the road, a faint shimmer of heat hung in the air where they'd been, like the world hadn't caught up with what just happened. She looked down again at the envelope. The handwriting was neat, deliberate, the kind of penmanship that belonged to someone who didn't do anything halfway. Logan Maddox. Her knees went weak. She sat on the porch steps, the sunlight painting her in gold. For the first time in days, something other than despair filled her chest. Not hope exactly, something steadier, recognition. That afternoon she went to the grocery store for the first time in a week. She bought a full carton of milk, fresh bread, and a small vase. When she came home, she placed the wildflowers from the letter into the vase and set it by the window. The bills were still there, but somehow they didn't seem to own the table anymore. Evan came home late, the smell of disinfectant clinging to his clothes. "You look different," he said cautiously. "Someone came by," she told him. "Who?" "Bikers," she said simply. "Friends of the man I helped." Evan frowned. "Clara, they weren't threatening," she said quickly. "They just thanked me." He looked at the envelope on the counter, the stack of hundreds beside it. "And they paid you?" She shook her head. "It's not payment, it's a reminder." "Of what?" She smiled faintly. "That maybe the world still notices." That night, she sat by the window again. The street lights buzzed softly. Somewhere far off, the low growl of a motorcycle echoed once, then faded. She thought about the key. She'd set it on the nightstand, its metal glinting under the lamp. She didn't know what it opened or why it mattered, but she couldn't bring herself to put it away. When she finally turned off the light, the last thing she saw was its reflection. Sharp, silver, waiting, and for the first time in a long time, Clara Wynn didn't feel invisible. The next morning began like any other. Hot sunlight spilling through the blinds, the faint whir of Evan's electric razor somewhere down the hall, the quiet dread of another day with nothing to lose. Clara sat at the kitchen table, staring at the envelope and the key beside her coffee cup. She'd turned them over a dozen times through the night, searching for logic that refused to come. Every angle of the metal caught light like it was taunting her. A key to what? Evan entered, adjusting his watch. "You didn't sleep." "I wasn't tired." "You're still thinking about them." She gave a small nod. "Wouldn't you?" He sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. "Look, I don't want to tell you what to feel, but maybe it's time to let this go. Those guys, they live by different rules. You did your part. Walk away. Maybe I can't." He looked at her for a long moment, then kissed her temple before leaving for work. "Just be careful, okay?" The door closed. The silence returned. By late morning, the house felt suffocating. Clara tried to distract herself, laundry, dishes, anything, but the world outside refused to stay quiet. A single motorcycle passed down their street, the low rumble fading too slowly. She found herself at the window, watching, waiting. Then came the knock. Not the heavy sound of yesterday. This one was lighter, hurried. She opened the door expecting another stranger in leather, but there was no one, just a brown parcel resting on the mat. It was small, square, tied with twine. No sender listed, only her name written in precise block letters, Clara Wynn. Her pulse jumped. She brought it inside, set it on the table and stared. For a full minute she didn't move. Then, slowly, she pulled the knot loose. Inside was a leather folder, dark brown, soft, expensive. It smelled faintly of smoke and cedar. Beneath it, a rolled set of blueprints tied with red string and an envelope marked for you. She unfolded the letter. "You said someone had to. You were right. Consider this our way of answering back. No signature this time, just the initials LM." Her fingers trembled as she opened the folder. Inside was a business license, Wynn and Partners Architecture LLC. Her name was printed in bold across the top, founder, managing architect. The seal at the bottom looked official, notarized, dated just 3 days earlier. There were more documents. A lease agreement for a small industrial office space on Delaney Street, rent paid 1 year in advance. Receipts for furniture, equipment, software licenses, and a note written in Logan Maddox's sharp, slanted handwriting. "You gave me breath when I had none left. It's time we return the favor. Follow the address. Bring the key." Clara read the lines again and again, heart pounding harder each time. She grabbed the key from the nightstand and turned it over. There, along the edge she hadn't noticed before, was a faint engraving, 102B, the address on the lease, 102B Delaney Street. She drove before she could talk herself out of it. The roads shimmered under the noon sun, traffic light and fast. Her hands gripped the wheel until her knuckles whitened. Delaney Street was a quiet stretch of converted warehouses, half renovated, half forgotten. The kind of place where startups came to try and fail. She found 102B near the end of the row, a pale concrete building with a metal awning and tinted windows. A single black Harley was parked near the curb. Her stomach tightened. Clara stepped out, key in hand, and walked to the door. The lock turned easily. The air inside smelled of fresh paint and sawdust. Sunlight streamed through the tall windows, scattering dust into gold. Tables, drafting boards, and brand-new computers filled the space. Rolls of blueprint paper were stacked neatly along the back wall. She froze. It was a studio, her studio. Every piece of it felt like something she'd once imagined in the quiet hours between bills and rejection letters. Then a voice broke the silence. "About time you showed up." She turned sharply. Logan Maddox stood near the window, leaning on a cane. His arm was still in a brace, but he was upright, breathing, alive. His face was thinner than she remembered, but his eyes, clear, steady blue, were the same ones she'd seen beneath the sun that day. "Mr. Maddox." "Logan," he corrected with a faint smile. "The people who save my life get to skip the formalities." She couldn't find words. "What is all this?" He gestured around. "A favor returned. You built your life around creating things. Figured we'd give you a foundation. Your people, did this?" Logan nodded. "We've got builders, electricians, tech guys. You'd be surprised how many. Architects end up on the road after life kicks them down." He chuckled softly. "Took a few phone calls, a few favors. Brotherhood's good at making things happen." Clara turned slowly, still half in disbelief. This can't be real enough, he said. The paperwork's clean, leases in your name, taxes handled, clients lined up. Clients? Logan's grin widened. 3 projects already waiting. Someone told them the woman who saved the Angels president might be worth trusting with a design or 2. Clara laughed once, breathless, on the edge of tears. This is crazy. Maybe, but honor's not sane, sweetheart. It's sacred. He took a careful step toward her, resting both hands on his cane. You lost everything doing what was right. My brothers and I don't let debts like that go unpaid. Clara shook her head, overwhelmed. I didn't save you for a reward. That's exactly why you deserve one. Her eyes burned. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. Evan, my husband, he won't believe this. Then bring him. This isn't a secret, it's yours. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the low hum of the ceiling fan and the muted traffic outside. Finally, Logan gestured toward a table near the door. A black leather vest lay folded neatly on top of it. Across the back, in deep red stitching, Honorary Sister. Clara touched it like it might disappear. You can't be serious. Oh, I'm dead serious, he said with a grin. We don't hand those out for free, but we figured you earned your patch in blood. Mine, mostly. A laugh escaped her, half shock, half joy. When she finally looked back at him, the question tumbled out. Why me? Logan's expression softened. Because you stopped. Everyone else drove past. The noon light streamed through the window, wrapping both of them in gold. He extended his hand. Welcome home, Clara Wynn. She took it, still trembling, still half certain she'd wake up any second. Home, she whispered. I'd almost forgotten what that felt like. Logan watched her move through the studio like someone tracing a dream. He didn't interrupt, didn't rush her. The light pouring through the tall windows made her hair glow in shades of copper and gold. It was quiet, except for the creak of his cane and the faint buzz of the ceiling fan. Every inch of this place, he said finally, was built by people who owed someone a second chance. Clara turned toward him. You mean your club? He nodded. The world calls us outlaws, maybe that's fair. But we build too. We fix things when we can. He leaned on his cane, smirking. You gave me a second life, so I figured we'd return the favor. She smiled faintly. A life for a life? Not even close. You gave me time. You gave me breath. That kind of debt doesn't balance. He walked slowly toward a drafting table covered in rolled-up plans. You remember that day? He asked. The heat, the noise, the way everyone kept driving. I remember everything, she said quietly. So do I. 47 seconds without a heartbeat. They said I was gone. He tapped his chest lightly. Then I wasn't. His eyes softened. When I woke up, I asked who'd stopped. They said some woman in a ruined suit, shaking so hard she could barely keep pressure on the wound. That image never left me. Clara's voice faltered. I didn't think you'd live. Neither did I. Logan smiled. But you gave me a reason to. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a small leather wallet. Inside was a photo. Clara kneeling beside the wreck, hair wild, face streaked with dust, hands pressed against his ribs. Someone must have taken it after the ambulance arrived. He held it out. Proof, he said. She stared at it, her throat tight. Why would you keep that? Because it reminds me what honor looks like. She took a deep breath, trying to steady herself. You didn't have to do all this, Logan. The business, the office, this is too much. He shook his head. It's exactly enough. You needed a restart. I've got men who can make that happen. Contractors, electricians, real estate brokers, even a few old bikers who used to draw blueprints before life got messy. You organized all of this? Not alone. His mouth curved in a grin. Rex handled the heavy lifting. He knows how to twist a few arms when he needs to. The lease? That was books. The funding came from every chapter that heard your name. They call it the Gratitude Project now. Guess you started a movement." She laughed softly, the sound breaking through the heaviness in her chest. "You're telling me your club builds architecture firms now?" "Just this one." He crossed to a steel cabinet, opened it, and pulled out a thick manila folder. 3 contracts already signed. Small projects. Community centers, veterans clinics, memorial parks. I told them the architect understands sacrifice better than most. Clara ran her hand along the blueprints. Her name was on every header. Wynn and Partners. The sight made her dizzy. "What about the partners part?" she asked, half smiling. "That'd be your husband," Logan said easily. "Paperwork lists him as co-owner. Don't worry, it's all legal. I wanted him to know this was built to last." She blinked. "Evan doesn't even know yet." Logan shrugged. "Then surprise him. People like us, when we find something worth keeping, we don't wait for permission." She let out a shaky breath. "He won't believe it. He doesn't have to," Logan said. "He just needs to see you smile again." He moved back to the table, picked up the black leather vest folded neatly across the top. "Now, there's one more thing." She raised an eyebrow. "I don't think I'm ready to ride a Harley." He laughed, deep and rough. "No one's asking you to. But every family has its way of saying welcome." He held it out to her. Across the back, embroidered in crimson thread, were the words, "Honorary Sister." Below it, the club's insignia, wings and a spade. Clara stared at it, speechless. "Take it," Logan said softly. "You earned it." She ran her fingers over the stitching, tracing each letter. "I'm not part of your world. You were, the moment you stopped that car." Her eyes met his. "People judge you," she said quietly. "They think you're dangerous." He chuckled. "They're not wrong. But they forget that danger's just another word for people who won't back down." He tilted his head. "Neither will you." She slipped her arms through the vest. It was heavy, the leather stiff and cool against her skin. For a second she felt ridiculous. Then she saw the way Logan was looking at her, like she'd just stepped into her own skin for the first time. "It suits you," he said. "I don't even know what to say. Try thank you. Or better yet, try living." Clara laughed, wiping at her eyes. "You make that sound easy. It's not. But it's easier when you've got people who won't let you quit." He tapped the side of his cane. "Now, about that key I sent you, it wasn't just to open the door here. There's a small box in your office, bottom drawer left side. When you're ready, open it. That's from me and the boys. What's inside?" He smiled faintly. "Patience, Ms. Wynn. Some gifts are better unwrapped in their own time." She crossed her arms, shaking her head in disbelief. "You're impossible. Only mostly." They both laughed, the sound echoing softly off the walls. Through the windows, the sun climbed higher, filling the studio with light. Workers outside were painting the sign over the doorway, Wynn and Partners Architecture, each letter catching the glow like it belonged there all along. Logan turned to watch them. "You see that?" he said. "That's what redemption looks like in daylight." Clara followed his gaze, her chest tightening with something she hadn't felt in years, peace. When she looked back at him, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Why me, Logan? Out of everyone you could have helped, why me?" He smiled, slow and steady. "Because when the world decided I wasn't worth saving, you didn't listen. You didn't ask who I was, what patch I wore, or what I'd done. You just stopped." He leaned heavier on his cane, exhaled slowly. "There's a kind of strength in mercy. Most people don't understand it, but every now and then someone shows up to remind the rest of us what it looks like." Clara blinked back tears. The vest suddenly felt warm, alive, heavy with meaning. Logan nodded toward the door. "Go home. Tell your husband the world just changed. Tomorrow we'll talk about your first client." She hesitated. "You're sure?" He smiled. "Absolutely. This is your story now." Clara looked around the studio one last time, the sunlight, the smell of new wood, her name on the plans, and something inside her finally unclenched. When she stepped back into the bright afternoon, the world didn't look smaller anymore. It looked possible. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm Clara hadn't known she missed: purpose. Each morning began with sunlight pouring through the wide glass of the studio. Evan would meet her there after his shift, still in scrubs, hair disheveled, smiling like a man who finally had something to believe in again. At first, he hadn't trusted it. "You're telling me a biker club built this place overnight?" he'd said, walking through the doorway on that first afternoon. "It looks professional." Clara had laughed. Apparently, outlaws make decent contractors. When she showed him the papers, licenses, leases, signed contracts, his doubt turned into awe. "You're serious? I'm not sure I'll ever stop being surprised." By the second week, the studio buzzed with life. 2 young architects joined the team, rookies from her old firm who'd heard about her story through whispered gossip. They brought laptops, wide eyes, and an eagerness to work for someone who had nothing left to prove. Rex Alvarez stopped by every few days. He always arrived quietly, leaning his bike against the curb, helmet tucked under his arm. "Checking in," he'd say, pretending it was business, but Clara knew better. He'd sit on the couch, pretending to read invoices, while secretly scanning the space like a watchman guarding what he helped build. Sometimes Logan would follow a few hours later, walking slower but stronger each time. He never stayed long, never interrupted. He'd glance over the designs, nod at the progress, and mutter something that sounded suspiciously like pride. "Community Center in Bakersfield," he'd said one afternoon, tapping the blueprint with his cane. "You put your name on that, people notice." Clara smiled. "That's the idea." He grinned. "Good. Make 'em remember who you are before they remember who I was." By the 3rd month, Wynn and partners had 3 projects in motion, each one carrying a piece of her redemption stitched quietly into its foundation. Evan left the emergency department to become office manager, a role he'd taken with reluctant joy. He joked that his handwriting was worse than any biker's, but Clara swore she'd never seen the books look cleaner. They fell back into old rhythms: late-night takeout at drafting tables, hands brushing when passing coffee, laughter echoing where silence used to live. One morning, Logan rolled into the lot, parking his Harley with the confidence of a man fully returned to life. The sun hit the chrome until it glowed. "You busy next weekend?" he asked. "Probably," Clara said. "Why?" He tossed a folded flyer onto her desk. "Angels for Hearts. Annual charity ride. $14,000 for St. Jude's cardiac ward. You're riding with us." She laughed. "I don't even own a bike." "You've got one waiting," he said, eyes glinting. "Consider it a company vehicle." She stared at him, half amused, half terrified. "You can't be serious." He tilted his head. "I'm always serious when it comes to engines and gratitude." Evan chimed in from across the room. "You've never even driven a motorcycle, Clara." "Then I guess it's time to learn," Logan said. "Rex'll teach her." Rex, who had just walked in with 2 coffees, raised an eyebrow. "She's got guts, I'll give her that. But maybe we start with a parking lot before we hit the highway." That week, every afternoon, Clara practiced in the lot behind the building. The first time, she nearly toppled over trying to find the balance point. Rex caught the bike before it hit the ground, laughing. "You fight gravity like you fight doubt. Too hard. Let the machine move with you." She improved fast. By Friday, she could glide in wide circles, sunlight catching the black visor of her borrowed helmet. Evan stood by the curb, recording every shaky triumph. The morning of the charity ride came bright and cloudless. The lot behind the studio was filled with bikes lined up in loose formation, Harleys, Indians, Triumphs, all rumbling with the low growl of thunder restrained. Clara stood beside her new bike, a sleek street twin painted pearl white with thin red stripes. On the gas tank, someone had hand-painted 2 words in elegant script, Mile 63. Logan clapped her on the shoulder. "Fitting name, huh?" She looked at it and smiled. Perfect. The roar began at exactly 9 a.m. Engines flared in a rising chorus that seemed to shake the ground. Bystanders lined the sidewalks, phones raised, faces caught between awe and disbelief. Clara eased forward into the sunlight, sandwiched between Rex and Logan. Evan waved from the curb, pride flickering in his eyes. The convoy stretched for miles, chrome and leather gleaming under the open sky. Every intersection they passed, traffic stopped. Some people waved, others stared, but no one looked away. The ride took them through winding hills and quiet towns, across bridges and open stretches of highway where the world felt vast and forgiving. The sound of the engines melted into rhythm, a heartbeat that pulsed through her chest. At one point, Logan turned his head slightly, his voice carried through the wind. "You doing all right, sister?" Clara laughed over the roar. "I've never felt more alive." When they reached the hospital at noon, a crowd was waiting, families, nurses, children holding banners that read, "Thank you, riders." Logan parked first, steady despite the cane. The club members handed over a check, $14,000 raised from sponsors and riders. Clara stood behind him, her face flushed, hair tangled from the wind. One of the nurses approached her. "You're the woman from the article, aren't you? The one who saved him?" She hesitated. "I guess I am." The nurse smiled. "Then you saved more than him today." By the time they rode back, the sun had softened into amber. The convoy returned to Delaney Street just as the sign outside Wynn and Partners caught the last light of the afternoon. Clara removed her helmet, letting the air cool her face. She looked up at the studio windows glowing gold and thought, "This is what daylight forgiveness feels like." Logan pulled up beside her, engine idling. "Told you we ride in daylight," he said with a grin. She laughed, shaking her head. "Guess I'm one of you now." He met her gaze. "You always were." As the engines quieted and the others began to drift away, Clara lingered, watching the sunset reflected in the studio's glass. For once, there was no fear of tomorrow, no unpaid bills waiting to choke her. Only the hum of engines cooling in the golden light and the quiet certainty that she belonged somewhere again. The city lights flickered on one by one, as if bowing to the passing of the riders. And somewhere down the road, beyond the echo of thunder and chrome, Clara Wynn finally believed that daylight could love her back. By sunrise, the city was quiet again. The streets that had roared with engines the day before now shimmered under a pale, forgiving light. Clara stood inside the studio, barefoot on the cool concrete floor, a mug of coffee warming her hands. The place felt different in the morning, softer. The sketches pinned to the wall caught the gold of dawn. Dust floated lazily through the light like slow-moving stars. On her desk, the black vest with red stitching rested neatly folded beside a framed photo. The team from the ride, Logan in front, cane raised, grinning like a man who'd wrestled death and won. She smiled without meaning to. The door creaked behind her. Logan Maddox stepped in, moving carefully, but without the stiffness she'd seen before. The sunlight caught the silver in his beard. "You beat me here," he said. "I couldn't sleep," she replied. "Didn't want to miss the sunrise." He chuckled softly. "Figures. You're one of the few who understands what it costs to see another one." She poured him coffee and handed over a cup. They stood in silence for a while, watching the light climb the walls. "You ever think about that day?" she asked finally. "The road, the heat, all of it. Every time I wake up," he said, 47 seconds without a pulse feels like a lifetime. I think about what would have happened if you hadn't stopped. I think about what would have happened if I had kept driving." He turned to look at her. "Then neither of us would be here." She smiled faintly. "You rebuilt my life, Logan." "No," he said, shaking his head. "You rebuilt your own. We just gave you the tools." She set the mug down, her voice soft. "People ask me sometimes if I regret missing that interview. And I don't," she said. "I regret all the times before that when I didn't stop." He nodded slowly, the faintest smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Behind every patch is a father, a teacher, a medic. People forget that." He raised his cup slightly as if in a quiet toast. "Judge slow, help fast." Outside, the hum of early traffic drifted through the open door. Evan appeared across the street, waving before heading to the bakery for breakfast. Life moved easily again, like a well-oiled machine. Clara walked over to the framed photo hanging above her drafting table. It showed her and Logan standing side by side in front of the building, the new sign gleaming overhead, Wynn and Partners Architecture. Below it, in small letters someone had etched onto the frame, were the words Mile 63. Logan followed her gaze. "You keeping that there for luck?" "For truth," she said. "It's where everything began." He smiled. "Then let's call it what it is. A promise kept." They stood together for a moment, the quiet stretching comfortably between them. Outside, the sun cleared the rooftops, flooding the studio in full daylight. Clara turned toward him, her voice steady now. "You know, I used to think daylight just exposed everything you didn't want to see. And now?" he asked. "Now I think it forgives." Logan laughed softly. "You really are one of us." Clara looked back at the window, at the golden reflection of her own name on the glass. "Wynn and Partners," she whispered, more to herself than to him. "Maybe I always was." Logan adjusted his jacket and started toward the door. "You keep building, sister. We'll keep the road safe." As he left, the light caught the back of his vest, Hell's Angels, California, its colors glowing like stained glass in the dawn. When the door closed, Clara stood alone in the morning silence. She took one last sip of coffee and looked around the studio, her studio, alive with the light of a new day. Sometimes the best thing that never happens makes room for everything that should. She smiled. "Thank you, Logan." Outside, the sound of a single motorcycle faded down Delaney Street, carried by the sun, and inside, bathed in gold, Clara Wynn finally understood what it meant to be home. The sunlight slowly fills the frame, soft and quiet. The same light that once blinded her on Highway 19, now warming every inch of her new beginning. Clara's voice lingers, steady and calm. "Sometimes the universe doesn't reward you right away. Sometimes it waits until the world is ready to see what you did when no one was watching. If this story reminded you that kindness still matters, take a moment now. Subscribe to Heart Tales, share it with someone who still believes in doing good, and tell us in the comments what honor means to you, because somewhere out there, another story is already beginning. Watch the next one right here on Heart Tales.